which is the case of Charlie Kirk. Here is what came out in the news. It seems that the FBI director Kash Patel has reportedly stopped Tulsi Gabbard's closest advisor from investigating whether Charlie Kirk's assassination had ties to foreign intelligence operation. And there, why is that? It seems that there is some sort of differences, within the administration.
Yeah.
And Larry, what's your take on that? What is that even Tulsi Gabbard, she's not able to access that?
Yeah, it's a cover up. Look, this thing stinks to high heaven, and while Candace Owens is criticized and accused of being an anti-Semite and some crazed woman, I think the work that she's been doing and just exposing the lies that underlie this. 2 days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, assassinated, he was involved with a text exchange with a large group of people at TPUSA. And he made a point that, hey, we're done being pro-Israel. That was the essence of it. Now, when Candace first reported that, people said, oh, that's crazy. That's not true. Well, it was true. And then you had additional pressure brought to bear on Charlie Kirk by this reporter with Newsweek, Josh Hammer. And there's also a rabbi involved. Look, the fingerprints of Israel are all over this. And that's why the Trump administration, who's bought and paid for by the Zionists, is doing everything to obfuscate and not look at it. The case against Tyler Robinson, it's not going to hold up in court. The claim that he used a 30-06 doesn't hold up. So there's a lot that stinks about this, and the fact that Joe Kent, who is he is a former U.S. Army. I think he was both Special Forces and Ranger. His wife was a CIA officer. She died, I believe, in Syria during one attack. He is now the head of the counterterrorism center, and he was doing what you would normally think. Was there any external involvement? Anybody from overseas? Why is that relevant? Well, Charlie Kirk was reportedly on the hit list for the Ukrainians, so it's just a reasonable question to ask. And instead of following up on that, Kash Patel tried to shut him down. Kash Patel in this is, I used to hold Kash in high regard, but I think the man's a disgrace. I think he ought to be removed as FBI director because, not only is he covering up on this front, but then his shutdown of the Epstein files. Yeah. There's nothing to see here. Move along. So the Trump administration is looking pretty bad on this.
Yeah, the only people having taken real action, and it's typical British action, but I guess you saw where Andrew was divested of all his royal belongings and heritage and everything else. At least they got him. We haven't punished anyone, and we're trying to let Ghislaine Maxwell, the one convicted predator, off.
Colonel, why is that? Tulsi Gabbard should know everything, in my opinion, if she is the chief of intelligence, the head of intelligence in the United States. But why is, what is the problem with her? Is she being, by the administration authorized? Because,
well, Nima, the creation of that position was fraught with problems in the beginning. John Negroponte tried to deal with it, didn't, in my view, do all that well. Even though we sent him, he asked for him. Tom Fingar, who was probably the best guy I ever met in the intelligence community with regard to telling the truth to power, if you will. And Tom went over there and tried to do his best with it. But it's a very difficult position. And there's a lot of still remaining tension between the director of CIA, who used to be the DNI under his other hat, DCI, we called it, and the CIA. And there's a normal competition between the others in the community, particularly the DIA. That competition sometimes is healthy, but it's an impossible job. I mean, I thought it was an impossible job for Tenet when he was the DCI. He devoted all of his attention basically to being DCI and let John McLaughlin be the director of the CIA, really. But it was difficult. And now, because they've separated them and created even a greater situation of jealousy and competition, it's even worse. Plus, Larry can probably tell you more about this if he's more current than I am, but they've still not fixed the two real problems with the DNI position. And that's money and power over people. If the DNI can't move people throughout the intelligence community, however he or she feels they are needed, and can't put real money to projects and other things that the DNI or the agency or others under her leadership, if you will, are involved in, then what good is the job? You don't have the power of the person. You don't have the power of the personnel.
Yeah, part of the problem is in theory, the DNI is supposed to sit over the intelligence community to make sure that the president gets the best intelligence, and informed about various issues. In fact, we just had reports this week that there's been a fight between the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research and the CIA. And, INR, as they call the State Bureau of Intelligence and Research, INR, to its credit, was doing its best to tell the truth about what the situation was in Ukraine with respect to coming up with a negotiated end to the war. And it was reported that the CIA's position was, that you just put enough pressure on Putin and he'll cave. And INR's position was, no, that ain't going to happen. And so how did Trump react? He got pissed off at state INR.
Yeah.
And the state INR director was coming back saying, good Lord, we got to rethink our analytical position because the White House is not happy with it. And according to one report out of Ukraine, there were the analysts who were pushing the truth about what was going on, they were fired. So, that's one issue where there's the DNI is supposed to ride herd over that. And I think maybe to Tulsi's credit, because this dispute was aired in the PDB, and it's very rare that you'll have an article written for the Presidential Daily Brief where there is a dissent. A dissent, because normally you're required to try to work it out. Well, in this case, they didn't work it out. The dissent went in, and so Trump was told about the reality. Now, the problem for the DNI is the area of covert action on the Directorate of Operations side, or human confidential source. They changed the acronym at one point. And when you get covert actions like what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Venezuela, what's going on in Armenia with respect to Iran, and what's going on in Russia, all of that takes precedence over the intelligence. And in fact, in many cases, the covert actions end up driving the intelligence, and you're required to be a team player. I mean, I personally experienced that with respect to the Contra War. I was the Honduran analyst. Honduras was one of the staging bases for the Contra insurgency against the Nicaraguans. Costa Rica was the other. And, my job was to, tell Honduras remaining stable, et cetera. And the DO, on the other hand, their job was to, get the Contras trained and launch all these military missions inside Nicaragua. And, there were times where I was told, you're not being a team player. And I said, I don't recall signing up to play on this particular team. My job's to tell the truth. So those are a couple of the issues going on. And someone in Tulsi's position really is not, she doesn't have the clout or control over the covert action arena. She can weigh in and say, "Oh yeah, I'm in favor of it," but she doesn't have veto power. So those two, that's all falls under intelligence, but they're like two different rivers running, each with a different dynamic.
And just to add to that, the other thing that I saw in the Bush administration, and it may have been peculiar to the Bush administration, but I doubt it very seriously, is oftentimes the NSC would so stovepipe the covert operation that much of the intelligence community didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah.
Both of you, do you think that the case of Epstein is the same as the case of Charlie Kirk? Somehow Tulsi Gabbard is an outsider to the case?
Well, she did. Yeah, it's a law enforcement. She doesn't have supervision of law enforcement and matters. I mean, the difference between what the FBI does and what the CIA or what DIA or even NSA do is that when the FBI starts collecting information on an individual or an activity, they have to keep chain of custody of it. And because if it comes out of intelligence who doesn't have any limitations on how they collect, it can end up corrupting a case. But so in this case, the evidence that's been collected over the years, because you've got witness statements, there have been depositions taken, and we don't know what other evidence has been uncovered, but it's voluminous. And then for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Trump to claim, oh, there's nothing there, this is just a Democratic hoax. I mean, that's absolute nonsense. More than $1 billion has been paid out to the women who were victimized by Epstein. JP Morgan Chase, for God's sake, has paid like $800 million. So you don't have that kind of money getting paid out on a hoax. And the fact that Trump had initially said, oh yeah, we're going to go after this, and then once they've actually got the power, all of a sudden move along, nothing to see here, because it implicates Israel. We're back at that. I mean, the Zionists are like a cancer because of their control of our government and and how they control the policies on a whole variety of issues. And this issue of pedophilia, we just had a recent case out in Las Vegas, Nevada, where the chief of Israeli cybersecurity got picked up by the FBI because he was trying to have sex with a 15-year-old girl. And the judge, who's got ties to Israel, let him off, or the prosecutor, let him off, let him go back to Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah. We found when we were doing the border under real duress immediately after 9/11, confiscating people's computers and everything else, we just took the Patriot Act and expanded it to anywhere within 100 miles of the border. We found that the major thing we were discovering was not terrorism, it was pedophilia.
Wow.
And Israel plays a real role in that.